I'm told that this is our last meeting. Y'all keep having last meetings. Again, thank y'all for being here today. And I, again, just want to express my appreciation to all the hard work that all of y'all have done. It has been, as the report says, 17 meetings. I think every one of our meetings was at least 3 hours. So y'all have really contributed the time, and our community should be grateful for the work y'all have done. By the end of last week, I was so tired of this report. Thankfully, David Bohr chimed in, and thank you all for your comments. I got comments back from a couple of y'all, and they're all incorporated, I hope. There's some minor editing that I did. We worked, we meaning Jonathan and David Drain and David Bohr and I, not to change any substance. We could figure out where things went. We added a couple of charts, and we finished up the main report this morning about 10 o'clock. So you should have that in a red line. The red line is to what y'all got Friday, so that should show you what the changes were. My hope is that we will be finished with this. My hope, no, this is not a hope, this is my demand, is that we will be through with this afternoon. I'm hoping that we don't have a whole lot to do. We tried to do what y'all wanted us to do after the last meeting. A couple of things I'd just like to say, in addition to thanking y'all, but Jonathan, thank you for being here. Y'all have been very faithful. David's plane is delayed. He's due in about 3 o'clock. But y'all have been very faithful and have certainly saved the community a lot of money, while at the same time contributing a lot to its future life. And thanks to Chris and Joey and Cindy and those others on her staff. I think I see Ronnie here. Ronnie's had more of a different sort of role, but Joey has been particularly helpful. And Chris and I would battle things out from time to time, but I'm grateful for your friendship and your work. And to Carol Wells, who just has been overwhelmingly good. She called me last week looking for a job because she's been assigned the port study now. So she is, she's going to be over at Rogers Tower starting next week. So, and I would like to say too, you know, we started this and we didn't really, if y'all were like me, you didn't really know what you were getting into. One person has over the years been vilified, in my opinion, wrongly. And as I came through this, I really learned, and I hope y'all came to appreciate, John Keene has been a stalwart citizen of this community. He is an advocate for his people. He is, you may think he has a rough exterior, but he really is not that hard to deal with, and he is very community-minded and committed to comprehensive reform. We may have differences, but I hope going forward that the past is not prologue, that we affirm what John and his board have done. Bobby, you have been also a great servant, and we appreciate that. We have been a little less able to get to know Randy Wise and Steve Amos, but they are also committed to this community, and as we go forward, we need to keep them in our thoughts and our prayers, and really the whole community in our prayers. As y'all have said, this is really a community effort, and we've got to figure out a way to come together. It's going to take leadership, which the first 3 paragraphs, which Sherry inspired, I think. It really is going to take community leadership, and we can't have people sitting around waiting on something to happen. We can't kick it down the road any further. And Council President Gulliford has also exhibited a great leadership, and we hope that that will continue. The mayor has exhibited great leadership. There's some differences of opinion, but however that comes about, we need to lead the community. We cannot sit and wait a couple of more years. It's got to be done now. So I, for one, and I hope each of us, intend to get out where we need to get and sell what we need to sell. It is a package. We hope that it will come around to being a package. As I thought about it, I will lobby my friend Mr. Wise. If you think about it, in the current employees, what we're recommending in light of the sacrifice for the community of the whole is really a 1% increase in their contributions, because the 2% comes from the increases back in the salary. So in a sense, those funds are coming from the city. So you're really talking about a 1%. Cindy, I'm not negotiating. You're really talking about 1% on the 5-year average, and the COLA at 55. You're really talking about virtually new employees. So for all of the existing employees, we're really not talking about a lot of concession. On the drop guarantee, if the pension fund performs as we all hope it will, then that's not much of a concession either. So that's just a little firing shot, I guess. So I hope we can all realize that what a great community. I was talking to a guy before Rotary today. One Spark is going to be here. There are lots of young people coming to town. There's lots of interest and enthusiasm about technology. If we don't do something about this, and we still continue to go from 15% of our budget to 40% of our budget for pensions, all that's by the boards. So I guess I have come around to thinking that this probably is the most important fiscal decision. Will make sense consolidation. So we need to keep that in mind. So those are my remarks. And my hope is today that we can go through the report, not really bogged down, unless there's something I don't really want to, somebody has a real issue with certain things, then we should talk about them. But hopefully we've caught all of the typos, all of the issues that y'all have had. David Drain and David Bohr have added a couple of charts this morning, I think that was. And I think that it all lays out pretty well. So, any questions anybody has before we get started? I'm hoping we don't take the full 2 hours. So. Okay, well, let's turn to, I guess the easiest way to do it is the red line of the report, because that shows the differences in what y'all have seen. And like we did last time, I'd just like to go through it on a page-by-page basis, because that'll be the quickest way to do it. And so if you've got any concerns or questions, just fire away. Page 1. John.
I think y'all were appointed on August 21st, 2013.
I said, John, we'd gotten all the typos.
We're here to help.
All right, thank you. I should have sent it to Ron Littlepage and Wayne Ezell, because they'd approved it. Okay. All right, we're not taking anything else on page 1. Page 2. Page 3. I couldn't get Charlie Appleby away from the 0.5%, so I held up my hands and surrendered to the 0.5%, but had to refer to the colloquial use of that. I hope that's okay. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. 10.
You know, this gets into the next couple of pages, get into some of the opinions, the legal opinions here. I think we need to be careful. I don't personally agree with at the end of the second paragraph, some of the deemed comply language. It seems to me contrary to the plain language of the statute. So I would appreciate it if we could just add something on there saying that there was some dissent on the task force as to the correctness of that agreement.
Yeah, I thought I had changed this to, you had wanted us to say it was an opinion. It wasn't our opinion, so that's why I added. But I don't mind. Does anybody mind to say that among the lawyers on the task force, there was not necessarily any agreement about the opinion? Okay.
And then I think along with that, the next paragraph, the third line from the end, it says efficacy of 1603. I think that should say, comma, in the opinion of the OGC.
That's fine.
And then
I'm saying it's fine. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay.
the last line, where it starts in a reasonable construction, I think it should say the OGC comments.
Where are you reading?
The very last line on that page, page 11, where it says a reasonable construction,
Okay.
I think it should say the OGC comments.
In the opinion of the OGC, a reasonable construction. Okay. No problem. See how accommodating we are, Chad?
You got it. Yeah.
Okay, page,
I was sweating that. I noticed.
page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. Before I forget about it, Chris, I did add the language on governance to the first part, if you saw that. Okay. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19.
Like, when you go back to 14,
14. Okay.
I don't know about the bankruptcy. If those contractual rights can be eliminated, would they just be limited, or would they be eliminated?
Why don't we say limited or eliminated? Okay.
I'm not sure about that.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what's actually happening in Detroit.
Yeah, you're limited.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, modified. Okay. All right. Yep. Yep. Okay. All right, we're back to page 19. 20. I want y'all to know that the colored charts are Mr. Shercliffe's inspiration, because he said early on that he hoped Pew would come around and prettify our report with lots of colors. So.
Pretty
On
much.
the chart, just a small point.
Yep.
I'm assuming we're going to list some the possible area.
I don't know how to do that, but we can figure out a way to do that. Okay.
Because they would come on the survey. I can't really go.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can.
If we'll figure out somewhere, somebody at Rogers Towers knows how to make them a little bigger. And maybe Jonathan knows how to do that too. Okay. All right, page 21. Page 22. I have a comment on 22.
To the second paragraph, there's a line there, the disclosure and transparency of the JP pension fund over the years have been substandard. I'm not sure if we've heard any evidence
Yeah,
of that.
I wanted to take that sentence out. I think that overstates. I think if we just take that out and say the task force believes that it is appropriate, state public incorporated in the ordinance code strong ethical and disclosure standards. So I think that we can take that out. That really was not what we concluded. In fact, I think we concluded that they did a lot of what we were recommending already. Okay, page 23. Yes.
Page 20,
Page 20.
the parenthetical above the chart, this is comparison of total planned fees. where it says 2011 being the latest available in Florida currency.
Where are you?
Page 21,
Page 21. Okay. The parenthetical what?
That's where putting mine pointing out that the 2011 data is a calendar year as opposed to fiscal year.
All right, so we want to say,
Instead of FY 2011, perhaps calendar year 2011, the parenthetical would be more accurate.
okay, calendar year 2011. In just the one place?
Just in one place, no place to finish.
Okay. That's on page 21.
Inside the parentheses, not the first reference, 2011, the second.
Are we talking about in the chart where it says FY?
He's right above that in the narrative.
Right.
The parenthetical says in the last line, 2011 being the latest available. We just want to be clear that that's calendar year 2011. Okay, we're over to page 23. Page 25. 26. 27. 28. 29. 30. 31. 32. 33. 34. 35. 35. The inclusions were to help, David Bohr had inserted those in response to your request that you don't have to go back looking throughout the document for some of these definitions. Page 36.
Got a question?
Yep.
The middle paragraph, the last sentence, I tried reading the context, variability shed by the city. I'm not sure if variability is the right word.
Page 36.
36, the last sentence in the paragraph in the middle of the page.
The sentence says, in turn, the variability shed by the city in a hybrid plan with blah, blah, blah. David Bohr,
Would it be the same, in turn, the investment risk shed by the city in a hybrid plan?
Yes.
y'all okay with that? The investment risk rather than variability? Now, there's not an implication that there's no investment risk, because that is just the, yeah, okay. All right. Shifted, the investment risk shifted by the city? Transferred to the employee?
It's not the entire investment risk, it's a portion of the investment
Yeah,
risk.
in terms of the portion of the investment risk shifted by the city to the employee in a hybrid plan, blah, blah, blah. Okay? All right, page 37. Page 38. Now, I thought. Yep. 37. Okay, I'll change that. Now, I thought, okay. Um, That's what it's referred to. We defined it earlier on as the premium tax dollar. Right, that's a defined term. This table on page 38, I thought had come out. I thought we had moved that to the appendix, but I did it come directly. Compared to across here, I thought that wasn't in there, so I may have. Yeah, here, it said in the next paragraph, the table is included. So when I tried, oh, I know why it's in there. That's the red line. See the line along it? That comes out, if we look on page 30, whatever it is not in the original. That's because of the red line. Okay, so that's gone. Right. Okay. Page 39. Page 40. Page 41. I guess the one on page 40 is coming out. The new charge is table 4. Yeah. The next table is table 4, on page 41.
39, do we still need to clarify that the notice only applies to current employees having less than 2 years?
I thought we said that. Let's see.
That came out of language.
Let me see. We said.
The table itself is less than greater than 2 years.
Yeah, we don't say that in here, do we?
Yes,
Yep.
put this, what we're taking out,
Yeah, that ought to go into, yeah. Yep, so this goes back in. Okay, got it. Okay. Page 40, I think is coming out. Page 41 is table 4. Page 42, I think that is coming out in 43 is what goes in. Table 5, the top, at the bottom of page 42.
I'm sort of, it actually helps if you don't mind the flipping, if you flip, you have your clean one open
Yep.
as well.
You can see what
which one
happens.
stays.
Right.
So it's we're on page 38 of the clean copy.
Right. And that just shows the two tables, 4 and 5. Right. Let's take a minute to let y'all catch up with that. Okay, page 44.
Back on 43, in the note below the table, the last sentence, additionally details not be appropriate for, I think the first purposes comes out
Yep.
for other purposes.
Yep. 4. Yep. Okay. That was Mr. Boer's rewrite. Okay, number 44, page 44. Page 45. page 46. Yes, sir.
I'm going to go back to page, I'm sorry, 41, the chart, and the title is Task Force Adjusted Design. So, is that our recommendation? Is that what's coming out?
That's what that column is, David. That's the table 4. That's what,
That's right, because there was, the task force recommendations are second recommendations about employees and they weren't current employees. But for the current employees, this is also the election chamber. Right. So that, so bring your question to where the task force recommendations. So
And does that, I mean, just to reader, does that pop out? That's our recommendation.
Can I make a suggestion on that?
Mhm.
I completely agree. If we just dump the shading of the columns, task force adjusted revised MSA and revised MSA,
if we do what?
if we just dump some shading into those two columns, to highlight or yellow, but these are our, that's sort of our collective recommendation. It is a little unwieldy.
You mean just highlight those two sets of columns in both charts?
Right,
actually the third one is
Right,
right.
right, those 3. Right, okay. All right, so let me make myself a note of that. Highlight.
Does
That's in
inclusion of
both.
the stacked hybrid plan
Mhm.
make any difference? Does inclusion of the stacked hybrid plan, is that necessary or if we're looking for clarity? I wonder if it is.
Essentially, because I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to show what the effects of our proposals are.
I think as we get to the civic council and people that really wanted us to look at, I think we need that. It's not just us. I think it's really part of the selling job. Okay, I think we're back over on page 43. Forty-four. Forty-five. 46. 47.
Um, 47 chart. Blue line says C plus KDA.
I think that's the mayor's proposal with the $40 million JEA thing. Is that right, David?
Right, there's a little bit of a storyline here, so we did sort of wait for these answers. So 47 is, if you look at the funding, what was it like, 48 is, and then you consider adjustment in terms of substandard. $100 million we thought of that, I don't think we had to, and we say, well, if I'm fine with 48, okay.
And the 40 and 49, I think David Drain sent those to us about 7 o'clock this morning. Is that right? Yeah, late last night. Okay. David really worked hard. Okay, we're over to 48 and 49. It occurred to me somewhere along the week that we never said what the savings were. So I'd asked David Drain to do that. So this chart we had seen, and he put it in, and David Moore provided some of the language to introduce it. But you can see in the chart at a 7% return, task force changes and accelerated payments at 7%, what those are. and at 5.4%. It's $1 billion. I thought the years were in there at one point. Let's see. David, help me on that.
Yeah, so this chart, did a good job of giving us what we had. It does two things. There's sort of three, the baseline, then there's the idea of changing benefits, and then there's the idea of accelerating time. Each of which has an impact on changing the gross dollars. The second, that's the first column of the chart, with the three lines for the 7% and 5.4%. The 7 and 5.4 make a difference because they do not have money in the city, of course, for them. The columns to the right can deal with considering inflation, and there's a fair debate about how the right way to do this. This is not unfair. It says if you value the time value of money, you get inflation rates, you discount it. Here's how this changes to occur. So there's only for second. Baseline was $6 billion. You have the left-hand corner at 7%. Maybe benefit changes right down to $5 billion. It was $80 billion. And then additionally, contributing early is another $1 billion. But then if you try to consider time value of money, those impacts reduce the future dollars are worth nothing. They got them, and so you go from the second column, $4 billion to $3 billion. So $1 billion all in considering inflation. What's not here, another way to do it, the city has to look at it, is discounted at the 5.4 to 7%. That's the net present value of the city. They had challenged the city government. So we're coming out with a number you can't compare it against that process. So we want to go to conference. Maybe a later day. But I think we're happy with it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
The second chart, 5.4 returns, it says the baseline fiscal year to hit 80% funded. The baseline would be 2035, but with the task force benefit changes, it says never. I don't understand that.
That's the other thing. This is really the chart that we got earlier. That's what it's going to do. So we'll pull it out. Let me give you one. Okay. These were main payment streams. What do they look like? There was a little bit of non-comparability because everyone has their funding status. So it's not an apples to apples there. And in the analysis that they were doing, the target is they never, in that forecast, they actually never got the full addressing the plan. So it's a little bit of the way the question is posed at the time that's what they do, which is if you pay X amount of money, you know, they say pay the yard plus 130, and the rest is 90. So we're a little bit trapped here by the question that's earlier.
Should we use those last two columns? They seem a little strange to me because it seems that the net result to me is that using the task force benefit changes, we wind up in a worse position under 5.4 returns, really under 7% returns. Looking at those last two columns, should we just leave those last two columns off because I think they are misleading? I don't see how reducing benefits and reducing costs is going to put us in a worse financial position. Look at the last two columns. Okay. No. Okay. Look at the underfunding in 2014.
Okay.
Under baseline, it says negative 183. And then it looks like if we make the back, which is good, we'd be negative 183 in 2024. But the task force benefit changes were only negative 31. 31, and being negative, I think is good, right?
It's less.
Right, so that suggests that making the benefit changes puts us in a worse position. And then, maybe I'm wrong about this.
No, maybe it's positive. Maybe the 31 is we're overfunded by
It is.
31.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
negative number.
Okay, so, but that's sort of unclear, but it's, yeah, and then,
I think that point's clear that it still looks better with the baseline.
Yeah.
I think it's a greater number.
right, and then the second column, the fiscal year to hit 80% funded, 2035, which is a long way off, but it's worse if we make the benefit changes to the second every year.
I'm wondering if there was a problem with data entry on those columns.
Well, depending upon the tolerance for the making change, this slide is available for everything. He sent to come up with the slides that here on the preceding page.
Yeah.
And you could just use the results of the preceding page, come up with an answer specific to our recommendation. So that makes it more.
Well, if we dropped out those last two columns, because the question I was asking was, what's the savings?
I'd like the first.
Yeah, and we
Well,
just,
they're not directly comparable either, because savings that would be from that, you pay less than we hold against it. You gotta think about it.
So we have apples and oranges.
So, this was an old slide.
We use a highlight color of one.
How about all white, white it out?
yeah, I want to present this to the mayor tomorrow. So I don't,
Well, it seems to me that we're all in agreement that this seems misrepresented. It's not accurate,
yeah.
right? I mean, we've taken the position that if we make the benefit changes, we make contributions of 200 million, it's going to be paid off in 14 years, or whatever that number is, not never.
Yeah, if we could get the data that's in the two charts before that, I think.
And I thought that, all the comparisons were showing funding status at 100% at the same time based upon the actuarial requirements. So that's what throws me off.
Well, so David will be in at 3. I assume he would have some time to work it, but y'all wouldn't have seen it. So would you rather just take the chart out?
Yeah. It makes more sense to take it
There's
out.
some other ways that I like the idea of presenting the savings.
Well, we say up above in the narrative, it also results in savings approximately $1 billion in gross industry. And I suppose we could elaborate on that if the question came up.
To David's point earlier, though, that the city council did it on a net present value basis, is it that hard to do the calculation to show the difference of net present value?
We had the data, maybe this is a competitive PowerPoint slide. We have the data, this is the slide.
Well, maybe would you be willing to, and David Drain will be here at 3, so maybe y'all could, so subject to the two Davids working it out, are y'all comfortable leaving it in? All right.
Is it the present value until you reach an 80% funded, is that what you're doing?
But the city council number said at 100% funding, do this. And if you do that, the city's cost is 72. So if our decision to go to 80% funding, I think it's our decision, it's all going to stay 100% funding. So I think using 100% is our answer. But we can do it, actually, probably shouldn't go.
See, we're not recommending, well, I don't think we're recommending that we continue the $200 million contribution past 80% funding. But if you did the present value of the contributions under the alternatives, and it's the differential to 80%, and the differential, the net present value differential would show the relative benefits of the alternatives.
Right. I don't know that we've got the precinct charge, yeah, they use 80%. So, yeah, it's 80% is used for the precinct charge.
But the timeframes are going to be different, right? So that could be the misleading aspect of it, couldn't it?
Well, the present value of
Wouldn't it be present value, the total required contributions to reach 80%? If one takes 40 years and one takes 20 years.
It's going to work out in the present value.
Right.
Okay, so we'll ask,
It wouldn't be comparable to the city council number,
Right.
but it would be validated for comparison. It's not
Would it be possible to back up the civic council data at 80% to do an apples to apples? 10 more minutes, right?
What? We're going to meet with the civic council tomorrow.
When you say we.
Anybody would like to come, but I know I've been invited. I think David Drain is going to be in New York. I don't know if Charlie's going to be there or not. We're not going to be a committee anymore. Gene is here. I saw Gene. I'm assuming that if any of the task force want to come, is that okay? We're sort of inviting ourselves, so.
Pardon me, through the chair, are you referring to the discussion tomorrow afternoon?
Thursday, no, tomorrow.
Tomorrow afternoon.
Today's-
Yes, that is limited to Jacksonville Civic Council members. So certainly, there's about 5 of you on the task force.
Charlie and Yeoman.
And Dr. Rupp and Sharon McGill, Dr. McGill. And David Boer served on our pension task force, so he will also be available. We very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, he'll be in New York tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So that's who will be there tomorrow. And we will pray for your chairman because he's going to need David Boer, I'm afraid. David Drain is coming. So that will be fine. So, okay, well, we'll redo this chart and split this in. And assuming David Drain and David Boer will sign off on it. Okay, we'll circulate it around. If anybody's got real heartburn about it. Okay, page 51.
I got a question on the last paragraph for funding sources. Actually, the change at the end of that paragraph. It says, once an 80% funded status is restored, I don't know when the last time we're 80%. I say once 80% funding status is achieved,
Okay.
then go on, required art contribution will fall below 140 million that the current art required. But if the JPFPF funding ratio again drops below 80%, I'm not sure it's today, I think today comes out.
Yeah, right. Today comes out. Must not delay in restoring the 80% ratio. Yeah. Well, there you'd use restoring because you want to go back to it. Would you agree with achieving it once again? What do you want to say? Well, that says once we reach 80, if it drops below it, we need to restore it. Okay. Okay? Anything else on that page? Page 52. Page 53. Page 54. Page 55.
I have a question on 55 on the conclusion. At the end of the green addition there, the last sentence says, if the proposed change implemented to JPFPF is expected to reach 80% funding status in 2028 rather than 2033, which doesn't sound like a big change the way that's written.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, maybe an addition at the end rather than 2033 without annual contribution obligations in excess of $200 million. Because you reach it in 2033, but you have to start kicking in $300, $400 million.
Right. With much larger contributions.
Well, is there a way to say that we reach it sooner and at less cost? So we reach it in 15 years or 14 years rather than 19 years at X dollars versus Y dollars?
that may come out of present value analysis.
Right.
You could actually plug the number in.
Right.
And we get there 5 years sooner at a present value savings to the city of X, whatever that is.
Yeah, but at a present value.
And if we have inflation
Savings.
adjustment, I mean, we have that available anyway, we can get that present value by tomorrow.
But I can see somebody, well, why are we doing all this to save 5 years? You know, back in 2028 to 2033, the reason is there's huge savings to the city.
We're getting there in 25% less time and X%
Right.
less cost.
I didn't hear what you said, Sherry.
That's what we're saving for the city if we do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And our payment is, you know, find the year where it really begins to escalate, our payment in such and such year is this amount versus.
Right.
So it's, you know, 200 versus 300.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Page 56. Let's go over to the executive summary. I'll make the same 2013 change. And if there are changes that we made in this that correlate, in the main report that correlate over here, I'll make the same changes. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10,
Does this state the 10-year,
hmm,
does this have the 10-year line of demarcation
where are you reading?
on page 10? Changes for our employees?
Yeah, it says, let's see. Yeah, in addition to task force recommends that with respect to current employees with less than 10 years service, 1 and 2. See that? Okay. Page 12, Chris Hand pointed out that we probably ought to have a double asterisk for Mr. Anderson to make clear that he didn't vote on any of the pension design. So thank Chris, a former Rogers Towers lawyer, making that suggestion. 3 stars? Would you like 5? 5? All right. Thank you all. I think we're through now. We'll make those changes. We'll try to get those out. I suppose, Chris, if we have a technical change, even though we formally present it to the mayor, we can get that into the report. So we're essentially done. John Keene, tell me, what's y'all's process going to be as a fund and your timing? When are you going to tell us you agree to all of this?
I'm going to tell you, Mr. Chairman, and task force members, that upon the adoption and publication of your report, and when we receive the copy, we will immediately transmit it to the trustees for their careful review and consideration. And we'll also provide, since y'all are out of business, we'll provide possibly utilize some President Gulliver's form there, go to them and tell them, this is what the trustees think, or, then to listen to get called press conference and announce things, because it could be in tongue to. We'll find a way to get out to the government and to send y'all a letter.
Greater than work
This
transfer.
is a courtesy, so if you know what happened, what we did.
Sure.
But some of the recommendations in here, as I've spoken with you before, contrary to the current bar statutes, and, so that if we want to change this, I would expect that.
Sure.
And, there's 161 of them over there in Tallahassee, you gotta get.
And that's where we'll end up negotiating as to whether a charter amendment, for example, could be done here without going to the legislature or not. So those are legal issues.
We'll immediately set to work on it.
That's correct.
We're very experienced in attention of.
We will be glad to come meet with your board at any time. And Kirsten.
And say, just before we get too far, on page 10, the executive summary.
Page, yeah.
For the paragraph beginning in addition.
Yep.
I think that may have just been a cut and paste problem. In addition, task force recommends that we expect current solutions like continued services to the city continues like easier. So, you see where the edit needs to be made?
No.
So strike 2B and 2A.
Yeah, we're not- In addition, the task force recommends.
Oh, and
that
apply.
current solutions to the city.
So 2B should be at the end.
And, yes.
All right. Okay.
Chris,
Yes, I know. Any other questions on these? And David will encourage you to move quickly on that with David Drain. And Chris?
Just since you asked Mr. Keene about process, I wanted to add one other point just going forward. Obviously, once the administration, as the executive branch of the government, receives and has fully reviewed the report, the next step for us will be to reach out to the Police and Fire Pension Fund and/or the unions, depending on the issue, so that we can sit down in a way that is contemplated by the law, which is in the sunshine, to discuss these issues, hopefully forge an agreement that we can then bring to the City Council for its review and hopefully approval. So just while we're all still here together and we're talking about process, I wanted to make sure you understood the administration's process as well. We'll review this, work to set up those sessions so we can hopefully reach an agreement and bring that to City Council.
That's great. And I know Chris and I have talked about the urgency of this, so he knows that they're not going to review it forever. They're going to, next week, they're going to be filing legislation, right?
With the pro bono assistance of the Rogers Towers Law Firm, right? So.
Right. And Council President Gulford, we'd love to hear from you and your process. I know he had spoken with me about our coming, he wanted to have a special council meeting to come before. I would encourage all of us to come whenever that is. So again, Council President, we appreciate your leadership along with the mayor's on this.
Thank you, Mr. Shy. First, a statement. After the council voted against the proposal that was before it last July, there was a sense that maybe the task force had lost its value. I think the volume of work, thought, effort you've put forth overwhelms and discredits that sentiment. You have done an incredible job. I both personally and on behalf of the City Council want to express my sincerest thanks to each and every one of you for what you've done and your service that you've given to the community. I mean, it's what makes this city what it is, I believe. And obviously this is a huge issue, and it's not going to be diminished by the council. Now going forward, it would be both a disservice and a discredit to your efforts and all your work to let this thing languish. It's too important as a community issue. It's got to be addressed. Therefore, yes, I will call a special meeting of the council in the near future to review both your report, the response from the trustees, some other reports and documents that have been issued, and then decide how we can go forward to address this thing actively and expeditiously and towards possible resolution. We can't just let it sit. I understand that. And again, as I said, it would be almost an insult to what the body of work that you've advanced for us to happen. It's incredible, let that happen. It's incredibly important to our citizens, our employees, our taxpayers, and the community as a whole that we get resolution. And I'm committed to you all as council president for the rest of my term to push that as hard and as fast as we possibly can. So again, thank you very much for your service. I'm truly, truly indebted to each and every one of you for what you've done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I see David Drain has come in. We could probably take a 5-minute break, and the two Davids would have finished the chart, and we could come back and approve it. Y'all want to do that, or you want to go? We want to do that? Take a 10. All right, David, the two Davids, y'all get together. David Drain, welcome from Washington. Hope your flight wasn't too bad. We've got one issue really on the final chart on the savings, and if you and David Drain can put your heads together, we'll take a 15-minute break. Come back here at quarter after. Is that right? Be back here at quarter after, and that way we might get it all done. So, thank you. Page 11 of the executive report, and this will also go at the end of the conclusion. This is Charlie's comment, and Bob and I and Kirsten, I think, we're over here working on this. This has to do with the 2033 thing. So that sentence, we want to say something like, if the proposed changes are implemented, the JPFPF is expected to reach an 80% funded ratio in 2028 rather than in 2033, resulting in substantial savings to the city and without a spike in the contributions required of the city, which would seriously impact every aspect of the city's finances.
I think the sentence is too long, but I like it.
All right, we'll try. Okay, you all happy with that? There's no dollar amount there, but that's what we want. Okay, good. And then is Cindy still here? Oh, great. Would you tell us if we adjourn today, what that impacts is for the Sunshine Law? And if we adjourn today, but yet we just technically present, maybe I'll present it tomorrow, and anybody that wants to show up can show up. But if we go out of business today, how does that impact us?
If you disband today and everybody agrees that they're no longer participating, then you're done. And it is certainly best for you as a chair. Protocol would have you do the presentation tomorrow, and anybody who is available to also count. Okay. But there'd be no action taken. There's no agenda. You're no longer a task force once you disband.
Okay. Any questions? We can drag this out by asking Cindy. She's a lawyer. She ought to be asked questions.
I could talk more. Sure.
Okay, John.
I'm really trying to reiterate Kirsten and Charlie's points. Is there a way in one sentence we can say our recommendations save this amount of money in this much shorter a time period in comparison to the current, and perhaps even comparison to other plans? Just in one sentence, we will save this much in this much amount of time in comparison to other.
I don't know if we can say it with other plans because we don't have the data. So we could say if the number is $1 billion, we could say that we save $1 billion.
It was that grid they were working on.
Right. So whatever that is, we could say that, and I'll play around with that to get that right. The dollars are important.
Well, and yeah.
Here's Dave. Maybe David can explain.
Okay.
And so I believe Carol's coming with a printout of all of this, but the question at hand, I mean, there's two questions that drive, what's that dollar figure we're talking about? One is just what are actual returns going to do? So if we assume that it's going to be 7%, you get one figure. If you think that they're actually going to be something lower or higher, you get a different figure. And then the other piece is how you treat future savings. So Carol's bringing a sheet that has kind of 4 different values for what the task force recommendations do. And one of them is just simply, in just nominal dollars, what is the savings? And the savings there is about $1.8 billion.
1.8 billion?
1.8 billion. But that, a dollar saved in 2044 is not really the same as a dollar saved today. So that's
Sounds like real money to me, then.
So another way is to say, well, let's adjust for inflation. We know we've got some sort of expectation of what that looks like. The plan's assumption is 2.5%, which is what we've been using for our inflation adjusting. And there you get a savings of about $1 billion. But then there's another measure of future dollars of future costs or future savings, and that's discounting and getting the present value of it. And that's not just taking into account inflation, but if I had $1 today, I can invest it, I can do stuff with it. If the plan invested $1 today, in theory, they're going to get 7% returns. And so if you discount any sort of future savings based on that, and you'll be getting these sheets. If you discount future savings at a 5.4% rate, you get the lower figure if you save $533 million. And if you discount it at full 7%, you get a savings of $363 million. And that's because a lot of these savings happen years, decades in the future. And so if you're discounting that, those savings seem smaller. Really all four are numbers that tell a story of savings. And it's the question of which several measures are the best way to illustrate what's being saved. When we provided the initial number for the text of the document, we used inflation adjustment. It's definitely true that $1 saved now is worth more than $1 saved in the future. So $1 billion seemed like a fair number to present. It's also true that if you're looking at if you're trying to treat things how the plan treats things and look at these costs and liabilities as the plan treats them, discounting at 7% and having that smaller $363 million number is also a valid measure. So possibly I added more numbers rather than concentrating down to one number, but all four ways are describing how much gets saved. And
so from the perspective of the public to whom we have to sell this, how should we?
$1 billion seems like both the fairest and most comprehensible number. That there is a lot of value in acknowledging inflation, but in terms of conveying something, present value means something to those who like looking at financial reports. It's not necessarily, but it also might be fair to show both measures, that looking at the future contributions and adjusting for inflation, the task force recommendations all encompassed, projected to save more than $1 billion. When using a technical measure such as the present value of future contributions, which is common practice in the field, that builds in future investment assumptions, you get a number of $363 million.
This is over what?
30 years, from 2014 through 2044.
What was the numbers we were seeing, for example, in the paper that were distributed based upon the agreement last summer? How is that being calculated? Because that would give a fair apples-to-apples comparison, I think, for the public. And they were saying lowers pension costs by $2.75 billion over 35 years. Which one is that?
I believe those are nominal dollars. I don't believe it's inflation adjusted. It's not inflation adjusted.
It wasn't that much, was it?
So was nominal dollars what's been being used since the beginning of this discussion in the public?
It was $700 million. Well, it was Peyton. Peyton was $700 million. And Chris, what was y'all's savings? $1 billion? 1.2 billion.
And so our comparison would be 1.8 billion?
1.8 would be the...
That's the number we need to use to
All
compare.
right, so can we agree on that? Mm-hmm. So David, can you cut everything else out of the chart to get us to what that's
Sure.
saying?
Deleting's easy.
But I don't see the 1.8 here.
1.8 is at that, so projected contributions under 7%. If you look at that top right,
I got it.
task force, it's 1.77.
Okay, got it. All right, so can you, it takes me a while to get there. What are we striking so we all agree on it? Are we just going to leave the first two lines of each chart, or are we just going to leave the top line of each chart?
So why would we consider the whole chart in its entirety in the report?
Because we're saying 1.8, but if we said that there were 5.4% actual returns, the savings are actually 3.4 million?
Yeah, but then we'd have to go calculate the 5.4 against the original agreements to see what those numbers would end up being, and I think you over data it unnecessarily. I just think we need to make sure the public's seeing apples to apples.
See, that's what I'm trying to avoid, is having too many numbers for the public.
Right.
So,
Just to talk about
yep, sure.
I think a good way to think about this chart is if you work from the bottom up. So, for instance, in the very bottom, you have 360 million of savings in the two columns, right? In the middle column, if you're assuming you're going to make 7%, right?
Help me, show me where you are now.
So in the far right column, the bottom is $363 million.
Right, okay, got it.
And be aware, too, that in the middle column, it's $385 million. Okay. The difference between the second column and the third column, the second column considers benefit reductions. The third column says benefit reductions plus make payments early.
Correct.
So because we're discounting at 7% and we're assuming we can earn 7%, early funding has no net impact whatsoever. I mean, and so much as you would expect, the far right column looks pretty close to the middle column. And in theory, they probably ought to be just about equal, but there's math differences, that just get in the way. But, and so you get a certain amount of savings that comes because we fine-tune benefits. Then, when you move up to 5.4% or inflation, if you can make 7%, but if you're only going to make 5.4% on your return, and then you increase your savings by going to the 5.4 inflation. So that's not very clear, but it's not clear at all. The more you invest and earn 7%, the more likely you're going to make a return over what your cost is, right? So, I don't know, help me, John.
Let's just say we're going to save $1.8 billion.
Yeah. Right. I think you don't want to cut the chart, though, because I think all these questions are relevant.
If I was going to cut one segment of the chart, I'd cut that discounted at 5.4. I think that just adds one too many kind of different ways of looking at it, and that will get it simpler.
I think that's
if you said we had to cut two pieces of the chart, I would do nominal dollars and inflation adjusted. But it's a technical concept. In the text, I think it would be helpful to guide people to, kind of the easier numbers, particularly if you want to do comparisons to other proposals. But, there's no reason not to have this more technical number in there.
Or just in my simple way, taking on the 5.4% actual returns, that means that because we're making the accelerated payments, we are almost doubling the savings. Is that what that's saying? By accelerating as opposed to just the pension design?
In both cases, we get, at the nominal dollars, we see accelerating the payments basically doubles the savings.
Right.
That about half the savings is by putting more money in. And maybe this is a good way to explain kind of discounting.
Right.
Well, what I want to know is when Jim Piggott interviews me or David Barrowline, what do I say? That's what I want to know. What do I say?
We spent a lot of time in the report itself talking about the 7% versus the 5.4%. Why is the 5.4% a more conservative approach to analyzing the steps we should take? To me, if you took the nominal dollars and inflation adjusted using both 7% and 5.4, I think the present value number is going to be a little bit complicated for people to really understand what that means. But if you took those two, because we have throughout our report talked about 7 and 5.4. So what we're really saying is, because we make the point that there's a 75% confidence that we'll have a 5.4% return. So at a 75% confidence, the nominal dollars are going to save $3.5 billion.
Right.
And a 50% confidence, we're going to save $1.8 billion. And then you can do, I think it's important to put the inflation adjusted in there because people understand that concept.
Right.
And the present value.
Well, that's
Present value is a little more complicated because of the assumption in the pension contributions itself, assume you're going to get to 7%. It's that subtle.
Right. Well, suppose we put the full chart in the appendix and said as a note, present valuing the savings occurs on an additional chart in the appendix. But leave this here because then you can say we are saving $1.8 billion.
And just one other,
we're saving somewhere between 1.7 and 3.4 billion.
One other
keeps
point.
it simple.
3 billion with 75% confidence.
Right.
I think one thing that might be helpful in thinking whether you want to give the savings as 1.8 or as 1 billion is thinking about what's the question you want people to be able to answer. If you want people to be able to answer, how does this compare to other plans that have been presented in Jacksonville? I think John's point is that making it apples to apples is going to be a useful way of letting people know. If you want to give a sense of what's the actual budgetary relief going to be over these 30 years, I think inflation adjusting is a better way to answer that question. So it's really which of those questions is going to be most useful to try to answer.
So is that the 1.18?
We can't pretend to have any confidence about inflation over 30 years. I mean, it's ludicrous.
And again, not to get technical, and I agree that we need to do the nominal comparison, which has been done, but it would actually be a 25% chance that we save 3.4 billion and a 50% chance that it's 1.8. So it's, you invert those odds a little bit, but then we really get into difficult comparisons.
So I just want to know what y'all want me to say. And remember, some of you may understand this, but those of us who grew up on the west side aren't going to understand.
Bill,
So
Bill.
may I make a motion that we
Yes.
say we save 1.8 billion in comparison to the 1.2 billion of the original MSA?
And that's the one, that's rounding up 1772. Is that right?
Well, that's if you don't discount it, Chris, we have that
We use
discussion.
30 years, the mayor used 35 years. I don't know how that changes, if it changes anything.
We're going to use 30 years.
Okay.
All right, so what's going to go in on the chart?
I think.
Are we taking the
everyone
first-
Except for that discount, the third group should go out. The present value discount at 5.4. Take that one out and leave the other three.
I'd like to take out both present values and put that in an appendix.
Yes.
Because the only people that are going to be really interested in that are the civic council, and they're presumably smart enough to understand it. We can pass that out. And the city council auditor might, but, and,
Could be an appendix.
yeah, there isn't, there's a, Carol's got, hold up the appendix and show them how thick it is. Charlie?
What I'm struggling with on the present value calculation, why is the savings better under the 5.4% actual returns for the middle column? Why is that better than the far right column? I don't understand.
Two
why.
pieces, and this may make present value seem kind of an overly goofy way of looking at things. So present value says if I don't spend $1 on pensions, so if I spend $1 on pensions, I'm going to assume the plan is going to get 7% returns on it. Next year is going to be $1.07. The year after that will be $1 whatever, and it will grow. But if I'm discounting all my costs at 7%, I'm effectively saying, well, if I just kept that $1, kept it in my bank account or kept it in my own investment fund, it's also going to generate 7%. We should treat it. So for that reason, the way that present value works is it doesn't acknowledge the value of accelerating payments. It's saying, well, I'm paying off a debt faster and I'm not paying interest of 7%, but I'm effectively spending dollars that I could be getting investment returns of 7% on. And that's really a limit of it as a analytical tool because the fact is that spending $1 now into the pension fund, letting it grow, is something that's projected to be valuable to the city. So that's, this is a technical measure that is generally preferred by actuaries and, accountants and those who look at this as trying to make everything's apples to apples. But in this case, it does really leave out the value of an important piece of the task force recommendations, and that's those accelerated payments.
So what's your will?
I wonder, to think out loud for a second, the concept of benefits versus accelerated payments. Accelerated payments arose from the pursuit of affordability and sustainability. We rejected the idea of accelerated payments as a way to make money. For instance, that was the pension bond proposal. Looking at a difference between paying now versus later, there's a value created there, right? And so unless you mix rates of return and discount rates, accelerating payments is sort of a zero-sum game, right? There's not a penalty paying later, other than the fact that your burden bears at 7%. So I think, I wonder if it's not what we should be getting rid of is the far right column as a suggestion, right? That what we're really, we've got a plan that costs something. And what it costs is dependent upon what our investments can earn. If our investments only earn 4%, 5.4%, our plan is costing us $3 billion. If they only earn, but if they can earn 7%, it costs us 2.6. So, that concept is a valid concept as you work all the way down the line with respect to the baseline. And then you look at, well, then, what if we adjust benefits? And by adjusting benefits, the benefits have more impact if it's a low return than they do if they have a high return. So that concept is also valid. But then you go to the far right column, and the idea that you create value out of accelerated payments, and maybe that's what's the disconnect. Because we're not really creating value with acceleration. We're creating sustainability and never getting into a budget problem, right? We're paying an amount that's designed to be able to say, what's a level payment that within a range of movement of investment returns, we know we can budget this, we can pay it, and we're going to be okay.
Well, let me ask a stupid question, but that 1772 is real numbers, because that's money that you're not having. The difference between the 896 and 1772 is money you're not having to take from libraries and parks and police down the road. That's real numbers. Those are real savings.
Well, that's true.
That you don't have to go to the city council and ask for.
Yeah, I think instead of taking the last column off, an alternative would be to bifurcate the net present value estimates from the top two estimates and have those in the appendix for the civic council. And these are the top
That's what
two.
I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
Are y'all happy with that?
So you keep all the first line, and you get rid of the column 3 for the,
Yeah, the two blocks all the way across.
Yeah.
And Bill, we've got to explain what the inflation factor is.
What is this?
2.5?
Would you just put that right on the chart?
Yeah.
So that we don't have to go looking for it?
Well, the other element is that you get to a place where you don't have to spend as much as you're spending, today, and so.
It's real
you
numbers.
accelerate the time at which that is going to occur. And that's not.
That's right.
When you're doing $200 million a year.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. I mean, those are real numbers that you're not going to have to take from the city budget later on.
Yeah, I mean, if you said that the city, well, they could put money in the pension fund, or they've got this great deal that's going to give, on the side, that's going to give 10%, maybe then you'd want to say, well, invest it there and then put the return. But you don't have that option. And that's why I think the accelerated payments does, reflects, obviously it depends on what your alternative is. If you had this 10% investment on the side, maybe you'd want to put dollars there. But you don't. You've got things that are of value now, but you also have the ability to say, we're going to spend more now and save a lot later.
Okay,
Don't people tend to understand that if you pay down debt more quickly, you do better over time financially? That's really what we're trying to say.
Right.
I think the narrative needs to be really simple.
And that's what we just added, that one sentence that said that we'll have quicker with substantial savings, otherwise it would impact every part of the city's budget. So put that in and put the first two components of each chart, and then we could put these whole charts so that David didn't have to redo them into the appendix as a net present value comparison of savings, something like that. Okay. Carl?
Of this 1.7 million, have we determined what part of it is benefit changes and what part is accelerated payments? Because I think that will be a question.
That's the difference in the 896.
Yeah, it's about half and half.
Which is very impactful.
Yeah.
Why don't you do a third column, and this is the total column. So it's recommended benefit changes, there's a number. Accelerated payments, that's a number, and then you total them, and then the public can see, oh, I get it.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Can you do
We'll
that, David?
I think so.
Okay. All right, do y'all trust us on the, we'll circulate it, but that's what, and we'll put the other chart in the appendix. Greg?
This is savings over the existing plan.
Correct.
It's savings over whatever, like status quo policy today.
So we probably ought to say that at the top of the chart. Savings over existing plan, whatever. Okay?
No.
All right, everybody got it? Everybody in agreement? Are you ready to sign off on this? Are we ready to now to vote on the report as a whole? The appendix, which Carol has got all the reports that David has done, all the reports that Jonathan has done. It's got the investment, the statutory investment authority of the fund. It's got the investment policy of the fund. And it's got that chart that shows the comparison of various counties with our benefits. That's what, and then now we will add the present value part as the last.
Do we want the MSP as a comparison for the gross dollars? I mean, over 30 years, what would it be? Or I guess you could, I guess no. We just do it. Okay.
All right. Okay, so y'all ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of adopting the report as a whole, noting that Greg is abstaining on anything related to pension design. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Congratulations. So, and let's also now vote on the executive summary. All in favor of adopting the executive summary as we changed it today, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Great. All in favor of adjourning?
Before we adjourn,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, thank all the members of the committee and everybody that attended. Owe a debt of thanks to you for putting this together and running this task force in the way that you ran, especially with very good members like myself. But I appreciate all your wisdom and your leadership.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, and the mayor will express this directly tomorrow, but on behalf of the mayor and the entire administration, I just want to thank each and every member of this task force for the incredible work you've done over the last 10 months. This final report really, I think, proves one thing, that everyone sitting around this table, and the one person who cannot be here today to sit around this table, Dr. Akins, were true community trustees, and we just greatly appreciate your efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go celebrate. We will definitely have a celebratory party. We won't wait till it's implemented. We'll do it before. But we'll have another one when it's implemented. Thank you. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock right here, we'll present it to the mayor, Council President Gulford, and Mr. King.
And we're free to speak to anyone at this point.
We're free to speak to anyone.
Even each other.
All right. Thank you.